Saint Hildegard of Bingen, born in 1098 in Germany, was a remarkable and special child from the moment she was born. From an early age, she showed a deep spiritual sensitivity that set her apart from other children. Even before she could speak fluently, she reported seeing peculiar lights and colors in the sky, as well as mysterious figures that only she seemed to notice. As the 10th and youngest of her siblings, this young girl was already showing signs that she would have an unusual spiritual path. When Hildegard was just 3 years old, she began to experience intense and mysterious visions, which in the innocence of her childhood, she could not yet fully understand. At the age of 8, her parents, aware of her fragile health and concerned about her future, decided to place her under the care of the church, believing that convent life would be the ideal environment for her formation and protection. So she was entrusted to Jutta, a young nun who would become her mentor, guiding her through the first steps of her vocation. Behind the convent walls, Hildegard dedicated herself body and soul to prayer, meditation, and study. However, the visions that had accompanied her since childhood did not cease. On the contrary, they intensified, gaining ever greater clarity. She continued to see luminous figures and hear voices that revealed profound messages about the future of humanity. However, fearing the judgment of others and afraid that they would question her faith, Hildegard kept these experiences a secret. Over the years, Hildegard excelled in the convent, becoming a respected nun and tireless scholar. Fascinated by knowledge, she delved into various areas, from medicine and natural sciences to theology and philosophy. Her knowledge of nature and the human body soon made her an authority among the religious community. But even while her erudition was widely recognized, her visions remained a closely guarded mystery. For Hildegard, these visions were not simply products of her mind. She saw them as divine messages, full of meaning and purpose. It wasn't until she was 42 that she made the courageous decision to share these experiences. By then, her visions had become even more vivid, and convinced that they were a direct revelation from God, she felt she could no longer keep them secret. In one of her visions, she received a clear command to record everything she had witnessed and heard. Moved by this divine instruction, Hildegard began to write, determined to communicate these messages to the world. It is disturbing to realize that Saint Hildegard of Bingen's prophecies, made over 800 years ago, seem to be coming true today. Many associate these recent events with world transformations, such as the election of controversial leaders, arguing that these moments represent a fulfillment of the signs predicted not only by Hildegard's visions, but also by biblical texts. In the book of Daniel, chapter 9, verse 27, it is written, "He will make a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week the sacrifice will cease." But what exactly did Hildegard predict about these difficult times? Are we approaching the much-feared apocalyptic scenario? Saint Hildegard claimed to have received visions of a divine light, which showed her the future of humanity, a dark future where great spiritual darkness will cover the world and the temple of God will be sorely tested. She described a time of trial in which the church will weaken and faith will be relegated to oblivion. Corruption and the desire for power, she said, would penetrate even to the heart of the clergy, those who should be the foundation of virtue and righteousness. Greed, Hildegard prophesied, would ruin those who had vowed to serve God, and corruption would reach religious leaders, taking them away from their sacred mission of guiding humanity on the path to salvation. She also described visions of abandoned churches, men and women distancing themselves from the spiritual and turning to what is material, with a clear preference for the earthly over the heavenly. Prayers in this scenario would be forgotten, and faith, fated by human vanity and blindness, would have to undergo a painful purification. Hildegard saw this turning away from God as a source of imminent suffering, because humanity, by distancing itself from the Creator, would make room for false prophets and deceivers who would lead many into error. These times, she said, will be marked by deception and false doctrines. False teachers will rise up, infiltrating the church itself and distorting divine truths, leading souls into error. Although their words are beautiful and persuasive, These false teachers will carry an intention of falsehood in their hearts. Hildegard saw the church in pain, like a body that is slowly being consumed by a disease. This evil, according to her visions, will weaken its purity and unity. She also saw a vision of a great leader who would emerge from the chaos. This leader will be charismatic and endowed with a powerful eloquence, able to win hearts with his sweet words, but his intentions will be questionable. In his visions, this mysterious leader promises world peace, especially in a holy land marked by intense conflict. Many will see him as the definitive answer to achieving salvation and global reconciliation. He will establish alliances that, at first glance, seem just and wise. However, behind his promises of concord, there will be a web of falsehood and deception. Their promises will only provide temporary relief, which will soon give way to a terrible nightmare. Saint Hildegard also saw that humanity, exhausted and desperate, will desperately seek any sign of peace and hope. In this context of fatigue and disillusionment, many will blindly follow this leader, unable to see the danger hidden in his intentions. Although he presents himself as a savior, in reality, he will be paving the way for even greater destruction. He will be the first to carry the banner of an illusory peace and will be joined by others who, driven by the desire for power and control, will allow themselves to be seduced by this false peace. When this fragile agreement is broken, despair will set in everywhere. In her visions, Saint Hildegard saw empty churches and faith seemingly forgotten. The temple of God, she said, seemed abandoned and unclean, as if there was no longer any place for genuine faith. People, she said, would abandon their prayers and seek material goods instead of valuing the spiritual. This time, in her words, would bring unprecedented suffering to the world, and much of this anguish would be attributed to the false leader and the deceitful prophets who would come after, trampling on the truth. She revealed that it would be a time when God would allow the faithful to be tested, just as gold is refined in the fire. Those who maintain a just and honest heart will face temptations and trials in their faith. However, those who persevere will be rewarded with the vision of God's glory. However, many will fall into deception, seduced by vanity and the pleasures of the world. At that time, purity and piety will be abandoned, and even those who have sworn to serve God will succumb to vices and illusions. In another part of her visions, Saint Hildegard described a time of intense tribulation and confusion, where chaos and despair will dominate. Famines, plagues, and natural disasters will spread, while people's hearts will turn further and further away from God. She described it as if the Lord had withdrawn his protective hand, and humanity would reap the consequences of its own spiritual negligence. The faithful who stand firm will be persecuted, but despite the persecution, true faith will be refined and strengthened in the face of all these trials. Many will be persecuted and even lose their lives for standing firm in the truth. However, God revealed to Saint Hildegard that although this time of darkness and trial may seem long, it will not be eternal. After these days of tribulation, there will be a period of renewal and purification. The Church, after passing through the fire of these trials, will emerge purified, like refined gold freed from its impurities. God will bring justice to those who have spread deceit and will severely punish those who have abused his name for malicious purposes. For those who persevere in the truth and endure these trials, a divine reward will be granted, and a new light will shine upon them. This will be a decisive time for humanity, a period in which each person will have to choose between God's truth and the empty promises of a deceitful leader. Only those who keep faith and courage during the darkness will have the strength to witness the new dawn that God promises to those who follow him with a pure heart. Saint Hildegard saw that, in the end, truth and virtue would triumph over corruption and falsehood, but only after humanity learned the price of distancing itself from God. This revelation is an urgent call for everyone to turn to God before this time of trial begins. As we reflect on Hildegard's words, it's hard not to notice the similarities between her visions and current events. She foresaw the emergence of a leader in times of chaos, someone who promised peace and security. In today's context of uncertainty, with increasing tensions in the Middle East and intense political disputes, many see parallels. Modern leaders like Donald Trump, for example, have made promises of protection and security for Israel, even claiming that his victory would bring salvation to the country, while his defeat would imply a dark fate for the nation. These promises have aroused anxiety and concern in many. This promise of peace is reminiscent of the temporary peace that Hildegard described, a peace that will seduce many, but which will bring, according to her predictions, a period of great trials. In the book of Daniel, we find mention of a leader who will make an alliance with many, establishing a pact of peace that will bring temporary security, but which will eventually be broken. Are we seeing the first signs of this beginning? The book of Revelation also mentions the arrival of a rider on a white horse, coming in peace, but whose presence signals the beginning of great tribulations. This rider is often interpreted as a symbol of a leader who offers an illusory peace, deceiving the nations. The promise of peace in the Middle East and the disputes surrounding Israel are themes that appear both in the Bible and in Saint Hildegard's visions. Saint Hildegard also foresaw a time when churches would be empty, and the value of faith would be lost amid distractions and material desires. Nowadays, for many, religion seems to be becoming a distant presence, and spiritual value is often exchanged for what is material and immediate. The search for truth has become increasingly challenging, and the spiritual void that Hildegard described as a dark cloud now seems to expand and cover the world. She warned about the rise of false prophets and deceivers, people who would distort the truth, confusing and turning many away from the faith. She also spoke about natural disasters that would intensify as part of this period of darkness and trial. Today, we are witnessing extreme droughts, devastating fires, floods, and climate change on a global scale that has caused concern and affected lives in various parts of the world. These events remind us of the image of divine protection that Hildegard mentioned, which seems to have been withdrawn, allowing humanity to face the consequences of its own choices. Are we living through the beginning of what Hildegard saw in her visions? Could this time of disillusionment, marked by promises of illusory peace, charismatic leaders, and increasing natural disasters, be the period of trial she warned about? What do you think? Leave your comment below and share your thoughts with us. These questions remain in our minds as we observe current events around the world. The similarities between what Hildegard described and what we face today are thought-provoking, to say the least. Perhaps we are witnessing important signs, or perhaps it is all a reminder not to stray from the path of truth and faith. In the end, as Saint Hildegard taught, those who persevere and face this time of trial with courage and sincerity will find a new dawn at the end of the road. Thank you for watching this video. Leave your like and subscribe to the Living Hope channel on YouTube. Activate notifications by clicking on the bell to receive other publications.